26/2021 Danvers Planning Board meeting. As a preliminary matter, this is John Farmer, Chair of the Planning Board. With me, I have Josh Morris as support staff of the town's planning division. Permit me to confirm that all members in person anticipated on the agenda are present. You can hear me. Members, Jim Sears.
Present.
Peg Zielinski.
Present.
Lou George.
Present.
Tori Adler.
Present.
Josh Morris. We can see you, Josh. Yep.
Present.
Thank you. Josh, if you can keep your mic on, can you just make sure that those who are going to participate for the first item for 3032 Endicott Street are available and can hear us?
It appears that the majority of people who reached out to me this week or in the past couple of days are here and present.
Okay. And the applicant, same with the applicant?
Yeah, yes. Yep, the applicant is here. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This open meeting of the Danvers Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. As such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a public, accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comments. For this, the planning board is convening remotely via the WebEx app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to share screen, your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this body will be shown during this transmission. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective, clear conduct of our business to ensure accurate minutes of the meeting. I will introduce each speaker of the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields for you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to converse with the other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, we have established an email address for public comments, jmorris@danversmass.gov. This email address is shown online with the streaming of this meeting. Residents may email comments, and they will be provided read out loud after the staff has confirmed their name and address. All email must contain the date and phrase planning board meeting in the subject line. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So the first item on the agenda, 3032 Endicott Street, request for approval of a major modification to an approved site plan pursuant to Section 4 of the zoning bylaws submitted by the Chemical Development Corporation for property in Danversport Industrial Zoning District. The applicant is proposing to install an above-ground storage tank, AST, Assessors Map 64, Lot 147. So this is a continuation of the public hearing from our prior meeting. So I'll turn this over to the applicant. If you would, for the benefit of the public who's joining tonight, just, give an overview of the application, and the next round of questionings will be by the public. and then we'll revert back to the members of the planning board. So if I turn this over to the applicant.
Okay, for the record, my name's Bob Rigo. I'm with Riverhawk Environmental. I represent the applicant. I believe Tony Mel is here tonight also, representing the project. Basically, if I could, I'll share my screen so I can just give a general overview of what was presented during the last meeting.
Sure.
Maybe. Apologize for the delay. Okay. All right. So the proposed project is going to occur at 30 Endicott Street in Danvers. It's an existing 8-acre industrial parcel that's currently improved with a large industrial building. They do chemical manufacturing at the facility. We're proposing to install a 10,000 gallon above ground storage tank next to an existing 10,000 gallon storage tank. Both tanks are above ground and will be located in a containment structure. The AST is existing, and the proposed ASC will both contain a chemical called methyl acrylate, or MMA for short. And that's basically the general overview of the project, very simply. And we'll go from there, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. Bob, if you wouldn't mind, can you just explain for the public? I know you bought DevCon, and DevCon has come before this, or at least the town in the past, to enhance its license, but what could be stored at that location. Can you just talk about the history of the permitting process, if you know it, through the town of Danvers, for chemicals being stored at that location?
You know, I would probably refer to Tony if he's on the line. He'd probably better represent that.
Yes,
Okay.
so I can chime in on that front. I don't have an extensive amount of history on it. I did join the organization roughly 2 to 3 years ago. What I can say is that I do know that in roughly the year 2008, that is where I believe where some of our initial permitting came to store this chemical on site, and I believe that is the same time frame as to when the tank was installed, permitted, and approved through the city. I know it's in that time frame. I might be off by a year or two. There was an initial permitting process that was done, and the land use license, I believe at that point, had a fairly low amount of chemical that was allowed on site. In the time frame of, I want to say it is in the 2011 to 2012 timeframe, there was an amendment made to that land use license that did go through the permitting process of the city that increased us to our current land use requirements, which are at the 150 K range of chemical storage on site at the facility.
Okay, because it's my understanding that, based on an article that was published when that initial permit was given, that there was really 3 licenses. I just want to make sure that we're clear. One for 150,000 gallons of class 1 material, another for 170,000 for class 3B, and 2,500 pounds of flammable solid. Is that still the case, Tony?
That is still the case.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we, since this is the continuation of the public hearing phase, and I'll turn it to Josh to introduce members of the public that want to speak. Some members have already spoken at the last meeting, so I want to give the newer people a chance to speak first.
Sure. So as I mentioned to you, John, there were several people from the public who wish to participate in the meeting. I guess right now I would ask or if anyone would like to, if anyone from the public had any comments or had any questions to ask, this would be the opportunity to do that. In terms of order, I just wasn't sure. So I see it looks like Mr. Matthew Duggan has would like to speak. So through the chair, John, I'd if that's what you'd allow.
Go ahead, Mr. Duggan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matthew Duggan, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. Just wanted to ask again about the containment system for these two 10,000-gallon tanks. Are those berms or whatever systems being used, are they sufficient enough to contain that amount of liquid? That's a question through you, Mr. Chairman, for the applicant.
Sure. Yeah, if someone from the applicant could take that question, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'll address that. Yeah, the containment berm is sized basically to hold if the largest container failed. So they're both 10,000 gallons. So it holds the 10,000 gallons of volume of the tank plus whatever volume is taken up by the other tank. So the containment volume, I believe, has about 14,000 gallons of secondary containment capacity, which if one of the tanks failed, it would hold, all of the, and it's a liquid. So there wouldn't be a case where both tanks failed at the same time. They're not connected or have any kind of connections that would allow for both tanks to fail at the same time.
Okay. And just sort of a follow-up question, is there some type of monitoring system that would alert staff either on site or remotely? And would that, system be in online 24/7?
Tony, do you know the answer to that question? If there's monitoring?
We do have a system that does monitor that system and does give an audible to the individuals who are within the facility. We do not have that tied to an outside group that monitors the system. We do have several items within that region that operate these cemeteries that do have 24/7 monitoring through an external.
Okay. The reason I ask is because if you look on your plan there, it's kind of out in the back and not, it seems just based on what I'm seeing that it's kind of out of sight from maybe the main part of your facility. And just as I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, I'm not concerned as other town meeting members are about the flash point or the flammability. I think you had mentioned it was similar to a number 2 fuel oil, which has very high flash point. So I'm more concerned with environmental impact potential. It's right next to the Waters River, which was a kind of a brackish estuary, and there's a wetlands there. So I'm more concerned about the potential environmental impact for this application. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the time.
You're welcome. Any other comments from the public? Anyone that would wish to be recognized?
This is Joe Anthony. I live at 13 Endicott Street, so I'm just a neighbor, if you will, who's interested in this. I liked Matt Dugan's last question about the hazard to the Waters River, potential hazard to Waters River, and more generally, what are the characteristics that neighbors should be aware of this material that's being stored? And I address that to whoever's appropriate.
So who from the applicant would like to take that question?
I can answer that.
Okay,
So,
go right ahead.
in terms of the we are providing, full secondary containment. So if there was a release from the tank, it would be fully contained within the secondary containment dike. So there will be no discharge. There's no discharge point from that. So there would be no discharge to the abutting wetlands or river. In terms of the properties of the material being stored, its flash point is somewhere between gasoline and diesel. It's the same class of hazardous material as a diesel fuel, but the flash point's somewhere in between. It's more like in the range of methanol or drinking alcohol. So it is flammable. It does have a flash point of 8 degrees Celsius. So it's not quite as flammable as gas and more flammable than diesel. I guess would be the best way to describe it.
I can also state that we are bound by a stormwater prevention permit. So we actually do monitor our stormwater on a quarterly basis. And that is information that we do have to report to Massachusetts DEP. So we are actually monitoring any discharge that comes off of our site on a regular basis, and including monitoring of the tank for any source of environmental pollutions as well.
Any other questions, Mr. Anthony?
Hi there, Tracy Green, 24 Bates Street in Danvers. I have just a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you. Question number one, has there been additional liability insurance purchased to accommodate the extra tank and chemicals stored?
So we actually have a separate insurance company that does come out and monitor our site. Due to the nature of the products that we do produce on site, we are actually audited by our insurance company twice per year. We just completed our fire assessment through our insurance company. It's a third-party company referred to as FM Global. We also have a mechanical system review that also occurs in the fall time each year. So the way that our organization does work is we do have a self-insured, as we are our company is a large conglomerate based out of Chicago, and the true name is ITW, which stands for Illinois Tool Works. The insurance company is utilized to help mitigate and audit us on a regular basis to help prevent any sort of instance from occurring that could either create damage to the facility, damage to nearby individuals, or any other negative financial impact to the organization as a whole.
So understood that you get audited twice a year, but the direct question is, has there been additional liability insurance accrued now because of this extra tank and chemicals, or that evaluation hasn't happened given where you are in the 6-month mark?
That has no additional funds have been done at this time, no.
Okay.
So just to be clear, Tracy, I think what he said is they're self-insured. Is that correct, Tony? Based on the financial condition of the company.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And then secondly, is there, maybe these questions were already asked at the first meeting, so I apologize if this is a repeat, but is there ventilation associated with these outside tanks?
The tanks do have a vent on them to prevent any buildup of gases that go throughout or that may occur within the tank itself.
Okay, and then I'm assuming that there's fail-safe measures, but I mean, without getting too technical, what are your fail-safe measures if the ventilation does not work properly?
So we also monitor the contents within the tank. So it does have basically a measure that basically says what's in the tank and the pressure and everything that is occurring within the system itself. So we do have a monitoring system that is followed, and I believe there is a secondary vent to the tank. Bob, I defer to you if you know if there is a full backup on that side.
I believe there is, yes, secondary vent.
Okay, thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question of the applicant? They can identify themselves or they can use the chat feature to let me know that you're interested in asking a question.
This is Joe Anthony, again at 13A Endicott Street.
Yes, Joseph, go ahead.
I was trying to present a second question and I was muted, so I apologize for that before.
No problem. Go right ahead.
So if this material went into the containment structure and it caught fire, would it be something that would be, what would be the hazards to the neighbors? Is it a smoke condition or is it is it explosive in any way? I'm sorry, I just don't know the technicalities of this material, but I would be interested in hearing as a neighbor of the facility.
Who would like to take that from the applicant?
I guess I can start and Tony can help me. Basically, if it got into the containment system and burned off, there'd be, some, I'd have to look at the material safety data sheet, but I don't believe there'd be any harmful smoke created or odors that would be harmful to anybody in the surrounding. Obviously, the fire would be the greatest harm, direct harm. It's harmful, if you get it on your skin or there's direct contact with it, but not when burned. In terms of explosion, it's similar to gasoline, where if it's in a contained vessel at a high enough temperature, it could present an explosive hazard. But if it's out in the ambient air, and it would burn, it would be flammable as opposed to exploding. It's not by nature explosive, but the gas can be explosive.
We can also say that the gas itself is a respiratory risk at high concentrations. So that would only be if you were in an enclosed area with a high concentration of the gas. You do have a respiratory risk at that point. We do have monitoring within our facility that monitors that level of gas to ensure that that is at a certain ventilation requirement. And that is also something that's regulated by Massachusetts DEP as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from the public? Sandra Lane, I see you raising your hand. You're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, we can. If you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Sandra Lane, town meeting member, precinct 3. A survivor of one explosion down here. And I have to admit that the general concession or actually the accusation was everybody said, well, it was DevCon. We knew it was going to happen sooner or later. And we went down there, 2 of us town meeting members, the day of the explosion later to see their films. And I was greatly impressed with the factory. It was extremely clean, safety factors all over the place. But with that in light, what I'd like to know is how many times in a year are you inspected and who does the inspection? And is it announced or is it unannounced? They just show up.
So
I'm not interested in your insurance aspect. I'm interested in the safety aspect.
Nope, absolutely. So we have a wide variety of inspections that do occur throughout our facility. And so what I'll do is I'll start with the local governance and go all the way up to the national governance that we are beholden to. So the first aspect that we do have is through the Danvers Fire Department. So through our operation to use and our ability to store combustible or flammable goods on site, we do have to get a permit through the fire safety officer. That individual comes on site once a year at a minimum to go through that permitting process. Through that permitting process, we do provide a breakdown of our current status of inventory of all flammable products, plus also our maximum usage within that calendar year previously. During that time, we also go through all of our emergency preparedness procedures, review, do a plant tour, all those sorts of activities with the fire safety officer themselves. That's the minimum. Typically, the fire safety officer has come on site usually 3 to 4 times a year. They are allowed to come unannounced at any time. And actually, we do have several different fire crews come out on a regular basis unannounced, just so that way individuals can become familiar with the chemicals we do have on site, how we store them, and how we place them. Our secondary level that we do have is the Mass DEP and the federal EPA. Each of those do receive the similar type of information that is submitted every year. A submittal goes up, and a renewal of our air permits happens every 5 years. At a minimum, Mass DEP comes on site every 3 years to monitor our ventilation of the room where we process this chemical in, and to ensure that we are not creating any sort of environmental concern to the community, and that we are following our permitting process. Mass DEP and EPA are allowed to come unannounced. That is rare that they do come on site, but at a minimum, every 3 years, they do come on site themselves. The Department of Homeland Security also comes on site every year. They do come on site due to the nature of our chemicals through a federal law called CFATS. And what that does is that monitors certain chemicals throughout the US. They come on every year. They actually did come on during the pandemic and were actually considered essential work. They actually came through in, I believe it was September or November of this last year is when we received our last audit. In that they go through our site security plan, our emergency response programs, how we're storing our chemicals, and then basically who has access to those chemicals as well. They are also allowed to come on at any point unannounced as well, but they do typically schedule theirs once a year. The last group that we're beholden to is Osha. That group can come on site at any time unannounced. We do not have to submit specific flammable product storage, but we do have several things that we do have to submit to Osha on a monthly and yearly basis with them to be compliant on their side. As for the specific safeties of the tank, the containment system, and those items, the tank is actually inspected internally by our staff once a month. During that inspection, they are looking for any signs of rust, anything of leakage, any external things that would be amiss. And they're also inspecting the berm, valves, and all of those sorts of activities where you could have any sort of potential leaks. We do have cameras in that system that also monitors the area, and those are monitored when employees are on site. The tank is inspected every 5 years per Massachusetts requirements by a certified tank inspector through an API standard. That tank was inspected in 2020. That requires us to fully drain the tank. The individual actually goes inside, make sure that there is no wear to the metal, that is still mechanically sound, and that the mechanical integrity is as designed and is applicable to standards. That was just completed by that individual just in 2020. And then we also have on site an environmental health compliance officer and a health and safety officer as well. That is also in the area to monitor those facilities.
Wow. I think my questions got answered. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, that was very helpful to the board and the public. Is there anyone else from the public that has a question?
Yeah, Joe Anthony does. 13A Endicott Street.
Okay.
When this material, if it would interface with the soils surrounding the facility, I know a lot of the lot is paved. It's probably all impervious. But if it would happen to get into the soils, how does it behave? Does it bind to the soils, or does it penetrate, easily penetrate? How does it react with groundwater? And maybe that has been discussed prior, but this is my first meeting for this.
What I would say, and I'm not 100% expert on that aspect of it, but from my understanding is that it would behave similar to like a gasoline or diesel, and it would actually evaporate more than anything. When if it does interact with water, there is no reaction. I know some chemicals will react when exposed to water. That's not the case with this chemical. So I believe more than likely that if there were to be a spill, it would, in my mind, it should not permeate the soil and create like an environmental hazard, but it would most likely then just evaporate from the area.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, why don't I go back to the members of the board? So Peg, I'll start the questioning back with you if you have questions.
I really don't think I have any questions. I was pleased to see the response from the fire department and the engineering department. So, and listening to the people that were here tonight and hearing the explanation from the explanations from the company representatives, I'm pretty comfortable with this. I'm fine.
Okay, Lou?
Yeah, thanks. I have a few questions. I have a concern in this, just coming up, being aware of the 2006 Danvers Port explosion. I grew up in Danvers Port. I don't live there anymore, but my mom is still on Water Street. So one of the things I was a little bit, and I did take a look at that article from 2008, back when the current limits were established, and it does seem that it was done sort of in reaction to the explosion that that DevCon wanted to sort of increase the amount of capacity that they had compared to previous. But couple of things I had just with a question, I guess, for the applicant. I know in terms of the concern I have is the sort of potential flammability and explosiveness of MMA, and I know you mentioned that the tanks are valved. If a valve were to be stuck, let's say on a summer day, would it heat up to a certain point where it could explode? And what sort of safeguards are in place to prevent something like that happening?
So we do have redundant valve systems throughout the area. So if a valve is not working, you could just bypass it, move to a secondary one. The chemicals are not in continuous motion. So what happens is that as an operator goes to consume the chemical, it will fill up. It's basically like a big kind of like a mixing can. So that will be filled up, and so it's kind of an immediate type of situation. So we hit a button, it starts to transfer the material. So if nothing comes out, then there's something wrong. You do an immediate stop. I would say that the whole system in our process is pretty much inert. There is no heat being added to the process. There is no heat or anything being done to the whole system itself, and that the tanks themselves are really just the storage. It's once we consume it. And I do know that heat was a prime factor in the previous situation, and so that is something that we do not introduce with this factor.
Okay, good to know. Now, with respect to the tank itself, and I did take a look at the tank drawing that you have, and one thing, and this actually ties into, I think there was a public comment from or a question from Bill Bradstreet, and a question involves the nature of the tank, whether it's a double wall tank, I think his question was, and it's my understanding from looking at the tank drawing that it's a single wall tank. And is there any additional, and the concern I have is safety. Is there any greater safety factor using a double wall tank versus a single wall tank? It seems like it would be obvious to me that a double wall tank would be better, but is that correct or not?
I can address that, I think. Typically, when you have a double wall tank, the second wall is there to hold if there was a release from the inner tank to the outer tank. So we accomplish that same thing with the secondary containment which surrounds the tank. So thereby only requiring a single wall tank with secondary containment that's represented by the dike.
Okay. Would having a double wall tank, I mean, would it be harmful to have a double wall versus a single wall?
I don't think it would be harmful. You could have 5 walls, and each wall would represent another level of security, I guess, and another thing. So certainly, it would be less likely to release out into the diked area, into the environment, but it wouldn't be any safer in terms of a fire hazard or explosive hazard or safety hazard. It would just be one more belt and suspenders, I guess, in terms of protection of release to the environment.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
So it wouldn't necessarily be helpful with respect to explosivity, but if there was a release, having a double tank could provide an additional safety.
It would provide another level where it would have to release to before it got out into the environment. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Let's see. In terms of again, I was happy to see sort of the report from the from the fire department. One question I did have, I guess, is with respect to any of the surrounding areas. I know we have some. I think we have National Grid, as well as we have Eastern Propane. Are there any concerns about proximity? Their proximity.
So we did go out and measure the distance from the proposed tank site to those areas, and the closest area, it's about 550 feet is the closest area where you get the first part. We also inquired with National Grid as to how deep those items that they have buried in that area would be, and they basically stated it was in the 3 to 6 feet deep buried range is what we have in that area. It actually may be a little bit deeper because there is like the railroad track in that vicinity that used to be there. So you do see kind of a steep decline. So it actually may be further down than that front as well.
Okay, got it. Okay, I don't think I have really any other questions. I mean, you answered a lot of the questions with respect to the safety protocols and inspections and sort of auditing that's taken place. I guess also with respect to audits, just turning to that, I know obviously during an audit, sometimes the deficiencies are found. Were there any significant deficiencies found any deficiencies found during your most recent audit?
For the tank inspection, no. For anything with the fire department, no. With our insurance company, they actually had just a request for us to do some additional testing of our fire hydrant system that we're working on being in compliance with now. From that point, there really isn't anything major that's going on. We did do a self audit over PSM, which means process safety management, which also is applicable to these types of items. And we have found some areas where there's better documentation, some better training, and some things like that. We brought in a third-party company just to do that audit ourselves, and we're working through those processes as well.
Okay.
That's something that we typically do about every 3 to 5 years. We'll bring in an outside group just to make sure that we do not lose any of the protocols that we do put in place.
Okay, very good. Okay, thanks. And I don't think I have any further questions. I mean, my only comment that I have would be that, again, just with the idea of safety, I would want to see a double wall tank versus a single wall tank. That would be my own. That would be my preference, again, for the safety of the area, understanding that it may not necessarily deal with any sort of explosive issue, but it could certainly, again, a belt and suspenders with respect to any sort of release of the MMA. I would really want to see a double wall tank as a condition.
Okay.
Okay.
Tori?
Just kind of following up on Lou's comment, is the design of this tank regulated by the National Fire Prevention Association or Massachusetts law or EPA, OSHA, or are you guys just making up the design as you go? I'm assuming there are some regulations to what this thing has to look like.
Bob, you're on mute.
Yeah, Bob, you're on mute.
Yeah, it's regulated by NFPA 30 or 40. But yes, it is regulated and it's designed in accordance with the requirements of that regulation, which is it's 30 or 40. I apologize for not knowing the exact citation.
Probably 30 flammable liquids.
Yes.
Yeah. We've got correspondence from Fire Captain Brooks that he's requested a copy of your original license. You provided that?
We did provide the latest documentation that we had, and we did provide that to the planning department as well. I believe the very original land lease license that's back from like the 50s, we're not able to find that copy, but we did find documentation that Captain Brooks did state was sufficient for him.
And when you add a 10,000 gallon tank to another 10,000 gallon tank, does that aggregate capacity put you under the purview of the Mass Fire Marshal as per Massachusetts regulation?
From my understanding, no, that there's no change in any of the regulations or oversight that comes. So what we are doing currently is we are storing some of this chemical in drums. And so what we're wanting to do is to offset that into a bulk tank, just because that does create a more safer way to transport, transfer, and prevent spills or other sorts of incidents that could occur within the factory. And that's really one of the main reasons we're kind of moving towards more of a bulk system versus the drums.
So primarily you'll be working with Danvers Fire in terms of permitting the construction design of this.
That's correct, yes.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your willingness to answer everybody's very detailed questions and your understanding that this is a sensitive topic for a lot of people.
No, absolutely, thank you.
Jim, you're next.
Yeah, I think all the questions that I had were addressed. I'm glad that the notice did go out to a larger audience than initially. I think only 2 residential neighbors were notified. So I'm glad that we did the vetting and had the neighbors weigh in. I like the idea of the double wall, so I would be a proponent of that along with Lou. I think Mr. Bradstreet's comments were all addressed essentially. So I think I'm ready to vote on it. I'm pleased with the extra outreach to the townspeople and the fire department comments. So that's my major concern. That's all I have, John.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I want to compliment the applicant too. This is, as you've already heard, a very sensitive area, very sensitive topic in that area, and you've been excellent in terms of providing the detail that people wanted to hear. I'm in that same camp that a double wall would make me more comfortable as part of the approval process as well. So, I want to, kind of ask the applicant, is that something that it would be acceptable to you folks as part of the approval process?
I think that would be, one question I would have is, as we know that is meant for a containment purpose, if we were to increase the size of the berm to have a larger amount of containment, would that also be an acceptable option as well?
I don't know, Lou, how do you feel about that?
I tend to just like and again, I would feel more comfortable with a double wall tank versus single wall.
Okay.
Jim,
Jim,
do you feel the same?
Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, by the time it gets to if we got to the berm, I think, I would appreciate the double. And again, that's something that we can condition. I don't know as much as we have to ask their permission.
Right, I know.
So, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the applicant. I have no problem with a double wall either, unless the regulations that govern the construction of the wall that they're using are not met. Is there a specific, you mentioned the regulations, Mr. Rego. Is there something in there that says that it must be a single wall?
No.
Okay, so you could do a double wall and still comply with the regulations?
That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, I'm fine.
Okay, appreciate the comments from the board. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I move we close the public hearing for 3032 Endicott Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Jim Sayers. Roll call vote. Tori,
Yes.
Lou,
Yes.
Peg,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I'm in favor of closing the public hearing. So now I'll turn it to a motion to accept the application with the condition that it's a double wall system. We're looking for a motion around that subject. There's a motion for the applicant to move forward with their plans.
Do you want me to read it, John? It's a major
Yeah, that'd be-
modification.
Yeah, why don't you do that, Jim?
Okay. At a hearing held on January 26th, the Danvers Planning Board voted to approve a major modification to an approved site plan submitted by Chemical Development Corp. For property at 30-32 Endicott Street, Assessors Map 64, Lot 147, shown on the following site plan entitled Proposed MMA Tank Location Plan, 30 Endicott Street, Danvers, Mass., prepared by Riverhawk Environmental LLC, dated October 16, 2020, revised December 30th, 2020, consisting of 2 sheets. This approval is granted with the following waivers from Section 4 Site Plan Approval of the Danvers zoning bylaw. 1, Section 4.8.6 Landscape Plan, required landscape plan because the project exceeds 20,000 square feet. Requested no submission of landscape plan since the project involves making no changes to landscape features. 2, Section 4.8.7 Utility Plan, required a utility plan. Requested no submission of a utility plan since the addition of the above ground storage tank AST is shown on the layout plan. 3, Section 4.8.8 Grading and Drainage Stormwater Plan, required a grading and drainage stormwater plan. Requested no submission of a grading and drainage stormwater plan since the project involves making minimal changes to the grading or drainage of the property. 4, Section 4.8.10 Building elevations, required building elevations. Requested no submission of a building elevation since the project involves making no changes to the exterior of the building. The facade and the elevation of the building are remaining the same. Section 4.8.11 Lighting Photometric Plan, required a lighting photometric plan. requested no submission of a lighting photometric plan since the project involves making no change to the exterior lighting. General conditions as written, approved by the planning board on January 27, 2004, amended through February 27, 2018, as written. We have one amendment to this, that the tank be double-walled tank. This approval is also subject to the attached list of general conditions approved by the planning board on January 27th, 2004, as amended through February 27, 2018, which are incorporated in this certificate of action by reference. And any approval of this site plan shall lapse within 2 years from the grant thereof if construction is not begun by such date except for good cause.
So Jim, just for clarification, you're referencing January 27th. Shouldn't that be January 26th? Today is the 26th, correct?
I take that amendment.
Yeah.
Stand corrected. Yes. January 26th.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, roll call vote. Tori?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Peg?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I'm in favor as well. So best wishes to the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, so the second item on the agenda tonight is 74 Holton Street, request for site plan approval submitted by Danny Sakira. I hope I pronounced his name correctly, for property at 74 Holton Street pursuant to section 4 of the zoning bylaw. That property is in the industrial 1-1 in Tapley Overlay zoning district. The applicant is proposing to modify landscaping and parking. The applicant has asked for a continuation of this application to our March 9th, 2021 meeting. So I'm looking for a motion to allow the applicant to continue to the March 9th, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Was that you, Tori? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Lou George.
Second by Lou. Okay, roll call vote. Jim?
In favor.
Peg?
Yes.
Tori?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
And I'm in favor of continuing as well. I believe that's the entire agenda. There's the, Josh, there's no minutes for approval. I know it's on the agenda here, but I didn't see anything in the package.
That's right.
Okay, is there any issues you want to bring forward to the planning board before we adjourn?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, have a good night, everyone. Stay healthy.
Take care.
You too.
You too. Have a good night, everybody.
Yes.
Have a great night, everyone.